Thank you everyone for joining us today. I just want to introduce who's on the call because we often have challenges putting faces with names. I'm Dr. Jody Steele. I'm the Director of Distance Education. And then we have on my team, Sue Yang, who's our instructional designer, John Wilson, who is the Academic Technology Support Specialist. And then we also have the Director of Admissions and Records, Myrna Duarte, Bobby Tello Perez, who most of you have seen her name in your emails. She assists with the grade submission process. And not with us today is Christina McCullum Martinez, teaching faculty who is the reason why we have 42 slides. She was very diligent in pointing out the various pieces of taking your grade book from Canvas and adding it to the submission process using self-service. And that's really why we created this short series for you today, is because of the new self-service system. A lot of it is similar to WebAdvisor before as far as what is being submitted, but some changes that many of you may have experienced is an increasing amount of audits and looking at grade books a lot more closely. This is due to regulations and compliance. And so we need your help to have the grading documents submitted similarly so that we have a standard for those submissions. This benefits you too, because as the lead to this session was, there are some common reasons that grade books or grade submissions are returned. And we all know that you guys are all A students and you want to do it right the first time. And so we collaborated to help with that process. We in the distance ed department were responsible for the Canvas portion, but obviously there's that bridge or that gap. And both admissions and records has a gap. They don't have access to Canvas. We don't have access to self-service. And so we're trying to bridge that gap with the help of teaching faculty. This is going to be very much process oriented, but we will have opportunity for individual questions if you'd like to come to the den to admissions and records. What's more, we're also training your IAAs and your divisions. And so instead of the den and the DE department, we'll be handing those questions, most of them, over to your very talented IAAs. So with that, I think we're ready to get started. So these are the top reasons for documents being returned for edits, and you may recognize some of these. So this is where we need to have some consistency in how they are submitted. So you'll see that there are not a lot of caveats here. It's really a checklist per se for how to submit your grades. So that includes attendance. It also includes no handwritten documents being submitted. So everything needs to be in the file format for Excel. Most folks, I believe, use the Canvas Gradebook, so that's probably your easiest tool to use for this. And there is also roll call attendance in Canvas. If you're not familiar with those tools, we're more than happy to assist. There's also a grading scale, and then the attendance legend needs to be included. And we'll get more into those details later. And then a final letter grade needs to be identified, and we'll show you how the easiest way to do that. Cross-listed courses or sections are very difficult too, because if there's a document that has a mix of those two sections, then it's very difficult for admissions and records to pick out what and who is in the section. The grading scale also needs to align with the final grade. That sounds pretty obvious, but certainly having that indicated to where somebody who is looking at your grade book from the outside is very, very clear of what you have, what your students have earned and what you have conferred. So then the student ID also needs to be indicated. And again, these things are all in the Canvas Gradebook. So we're going to show you how to most easily submit these documents to go along with the grade in self-service.
So I'll be going over exporting grades and attendance from Canvas. And so this is if you used Canvas to keep track of grades and attendance throughout the semester. If you do not use Canvas, you will want to pay attention to the instructions, I believe, from admissions and records at the end on creating the correct file type to upload into self-service. Next slide, John. All right, so before exporting from Canvas, there are a few things that you will need to do to prepare your gradebook for the export. The first is to enable a grading scheme
to me from a family
in your course. So the first is to enable a grading scheme in your course. And so the grading scheme is the percentage range associated with a letter grade, such as 90 to 100 is an A, less than 90 to 80 would be a B, and so on and so forth. And what this does is it adds the final letter grade to at the end of each student's score in the export file based on the grading scheme that is set and selected in Canvas. And so to check if this is enabled in your courses, you want to go to settings. Next slide, John. And under the course details tab, you want to scroll to where it says grading scheme. And you want to make sure that the enable course grading scheme checkbox is checked. If the checkbox is already checked, you can view the grading scheme and make sure that it's correct for your course. Or you may modify it and change it or select a different one if necessary. Next slide, John. Most importantly, you will want to scroll down after you've made the changes, scroll down to the bottom of the page and click the Update Course Details button so that any changes are saved. If you don't do this, then you'll have to come back into the settings and enable that again because the changes have not been saved into your course yet. Next slide. Okay, so once you have enabled the grading scheme, you can go to grades. And when Canvas exports grades, it doesn't consider any ungraded assignments in the student's total grade. So another step before we actually export is to check for a couple of items. When reviewing your gradebook, look for any cells that may have dashes in them. Now, a dash indicates that it was a non-submitted assignment and there was no grade associated with it. And if you left it as a dash, the assignment would not count as part of the student's grade. So you will need to enter a score, whether that is a 0 or another score for the student's grade to be calculated correctly. Secondly, you want to look for any cells that has a paper with an exclamation point icon. And this indicates that an assignment has been submitted, but has not yet been graded. And so you can simply click on the cell and there's going to be a sidebar icon that appears where you can then access SpeedGrader and grade the student's submission. Now, lastly, you also want to look for any assignments that may still be hidden. And so looking at the columns in your gradebook, any assignments with grades hidden from students will be indicated by the visibility icon, which looks like an eye with a slash through it. And so to unhide these columns, you want to go to the 3 dots and check post grades. And so once you've checked and reviewed your gradebook and you're now ready to export, You can go up to where it has the actions menu. Next slide. And from the actions menu here, then you can select export entire gradebook. Next slide. Now you will see a notification that the export process has started, and this may take a few minutes. There will be another notification once the export is completed. When the export is completed, Canvas will download the file automatically to your computer. And this file, it's going to be a CSV file. CSV is a common separated values file format. And so basically what that means is it's a file with multiple fields that are separated by commas. And so to modify or make changes to the CSV file, you will need to open and resave it in Excel. Once the export process is complete, typically this goes into your downloads folder or wherever you have selected the download files to be saved to. And so you want to look for the export file. It will have the date, the course name, and it's going to end with a .csv extension. You can move the file to your desktop or create a folder for the semester, just so that you're organized and you know where to find these files. And again, to make any changes or anything, you will have to open the files in Excel. Next slide. Now, if you use the attendance tool in Canvas to track attendance, you can generate a report for the semester as well. And to do this, you want to go into your course and on the left menu, click on attendance. And once in attendance, then you want to click on the gear icon, which is on the upper right-hand corner. Next slide. And from here, from the drop-down menu, you want to select the attendance report. Next slide. So on this screen, you have the option to put in the start and end date for the semester. But because the course is already set up based on the term that it is taught, entering dates on this screen is not necessary. But you can still put them in the first day of the semester and the final day of the semester. Now, unlike the grades report, though, the attendance report is going to be sent via email. And so you want to confirm that the email that is there is the correct email for the report to be sent to. Once you click on Run Report, you will see a notification. Can you go back one more? Wait. Yeah, you will see a notification that your report will arrive in your inbox shortly. This process may take a few minutes or so, but next slide. So once the process is completed, you want to check your email for a message with the subject line, roll call attendance report. In your FCC email, you may want to look in your other tab as well to see if the email was sent there. Next slide. Now, the roll call email, it's going to include a long link. And when you click on the link, the report is going to be saved onto your computer. And similar to the gradebook export, the attendance report is also saved as a CSV file and will need to be modified and opened in Excel. This email link will only be valid for 24 hours. And so if you need to download the report again, you just have to go back into Canvas and run the report and wait for the email to be sent to you. Next slide. This one. Again, similar to the gradebook report, just just go into your downloads folder on your computer and look for the export file. It will say attendance, and it will end with a .csv extension. And so you can move this into a folder that you've created or your desktop so that you have access to it. And I'll turn it over to John, who will go over the Excel and grades portion.
Thanks, Sue. Can everybody hear me okay? Great. So once we've downloaded those files, we have two CSV files that will open in Excel, but we can't turn those into admissions and records yet because we need to do some work inside of Excel. So we're going to go over that real quick as to what you need to do. And basically the CSV files will be on your computer and they're ready to start working on. So once we're ready to start working on them, just double click on any of those files and it'll open right into Excel. Now, once we have it in Excel, we need to prep the file to give to admissions and records, right? And as part of that prep, there's some requirements that we need to identify for them. And those requirements are, as you can see here, the student ID number, the final score, and the final grade. And what we're going to do is just simply highlight these columns for admissions and records so it makes them easier to find and easier to identify so they're able to do. The other component that is in here is the grade scale. And you can see down at the bottom on this example that there's a grade scale put in there. And it's the normal 90 to 100 equals an A and 80 to 90 equals a B. So to highlight the columns that we need, you simply click on the letter of the, or the number, excuse me, the letter of the column. In this case, the SIS ID number. You click column C, and then there's a little highlight box or fill box is what they call it up in the menu. And if you look right there, when you click on that paint bucket, you'll be presented with some other colors that you can choose to highlight it. Please don't highlight it black or highlight it white because that will just erase the text and we won't be able to see it. But if you like yellow, you can use yellow. If you like red, you can use red. If you like blue, you can use blue. But you simply click on it, click on the color, and that will highlight that whole column. Once we have the columns highlighted, and again, it's just the three, the student ID number, the final score, and the final grade, right? Once we have those highlighted, excuse me, now we need to save this as an Excel format to give to admissions and records, right? So we choose File and we choose Save As, and that'll bring up options as to what we can save it as. Now, notice the name. We need to adjust the name a little bit. Your grade file will have a date timestamp on the front and the word grades, and then something similar with the course title and section and all that. Admissions and records wants it very clean, right? In this example, they take out all the other information and just leave the math -2A -12345 last name term, right? And in this example, because we're going to have two separate files, they put GRD for grades, and we'll do something similar with the attendance file, and I'll show you that here in a second. Most important part is the file format part. Down at the bottom, you'll see that comma separated value box. You need to click on that box. When you click that box, you'll get a bunch of choices. From there, you can pick the .xls, or with the new versions of Microsoft Office, .xlxx. So just be aware that you need to change that format. And here's an example of the list that you'll see. Then make sure you save it. And again, make sure you save it somewhere that you remember. If you opened it out of your downloads folder and you do save, the downloads folder will be the default location. So just remember that, right? If you want it on your desktop, you're going to need to change that location. And once you've saved it, that file is now ready to go. So let's go look at the attendance file. So same thing, on our computers, we have the CSV file that we downloaded from the attendance report. If you just double click it on your computer, it'll open. Once it's open, the beauty of using the roll call attendance tools, we don't have to make a lot of changes to it. We just need to convert the file. So you start by opening the file, you go up to the file menu, and you're going to choose Save As again. And that's going to bring up these options. And this is the important part in this screen. This is where we need to rename it and we need to change the file format. So again, have the name match what you did for the grade file. So in this instance, it's math-2A-12345 last name term. And then you'll see the ATT just to identify that this file is an attendance file. It's not the grade file, right? So we have two separate files. And then most importantly, make sure you go down to that file format and choose that we're going to be doing an Excel file. And then again, there's the options. And we click save. And again, pay attention to the location because you're going to want to keep these files together, your attendance and your grades, so that when we go into self-service and we enter the information, we can quickly find those files and upload them. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Bobby to talk about self-service.
Hello all. If you guys don't already know me, I'm Bobby Tello-Perez in Admissions and Records. I help faculty with some of their issues, grades and things of that nature. We're going to go into entering grades into self-service. Admissions and Records requires these documents to be held for auditing purposes. So like during our process for accreditation, there's different steps and then we hold on to your records. So if at the end of the year, when they pull records and they request them, they have to have specific information. But first, to go into self-service, next slide, please, John. So we're going to enter grades into self-service. So you're going to log into your self-service. For those who have used WebAdvisor before, it's kind of the same thing. You're logging into your portal. And then when you go and you got into your portal, you're going to go to grades, but you're going to click the faculty tab, select the section name you wish to enter grades for, and then click the grading tab and then the final grades tab. From there, it popped up. I'm sorry. From there, you'll see a list of your students and then a number of boxes next to it. So the final grade column, you will just click on the final grade column and you'll get a drop down menu. On that menu, it'll list your grades. You'll enter the grade for the student and then go to each one. Now, any student that might not be passing, if they're failing, a last date of attendance is required. It won't let you go further if you don't put that last date of attendance in there. Positive attendance classes. Go ahead and go to the next tab for me, John. Positive attendance classes, those will be labeled as such, but before you can enter a letter grade for those, you have to enter in their hours first, and there's a drop down or a fill box next to that. Only classes that are designated as positive attendance will show the total hours column. So if you're not a positive attendance course, you won't necessarily have to worry about that. As I just said before, F grades require last dates of attendance. Your rosters should match that too. I'll go over that in a little bit when we go over the requirements, but pass no pass classes. So there's been some confusion sometimes when they think that they have to enter their grades in as pass no pass, but the system actually converts the actual letter grade A through F, whatever their grade is, to that pass or no pass. So if you're going to enter grades for your pass no pass class, make sure you enter in letter grades like A, B, C, D, F, whatever it is. Non-credit classes, meaning they have no units. Those you would enter a Y for the completed class or an N if they did not complete the class. Sometimes with the pass no pass classes, we've gotten some confusion with that too. So if your class is a 0-unit class and a non-credit class, you will enter a Y or an N for completed and not completed. Incomplete grades. If a student has had some sort of problem and you're wanting to work with the student, if they approach you and ask about an incomplete grade, for the letter grade you're going to select is the I in the drop down. You have to include an expiration date. There's a drop down for that, I think, or a box you'll enter it in, and you'll enter that deadline. Now, the default deadline for incomplete grades is usually the last day of the following semesters. That does not include summer. Summers don't count as main terms. So, but at this point, you can give them any date you wish to get the student to complete their work in order for you to get your paperwork done and then turn it into me so I can upgrade their letter grade. Late instructor drops. If you still have drops that either you missed or maybe you thought the student was still going to be attending, but they never did, and they stopped attending prior to the last date of drop of your class, you're going to leave their column blank in the grading when you're entering grades. You can leave them blank. If they never attended, you can click on the never attended checkbox. If you do need to do some late instructor drops, just email records@fresnocitycollege.edu, and for each section you need it for, and we will send you the link for the form to request those. Next, thank you. So requirements for your grade roster. So we do need the following items on your Excel sheet. Has to be the student ID number, the State Center Community College District 7-digit ID number. Canvas will create its own ID, so the SIS ID column is the actual ID number for the student in our system. They do require the student's first and last name. Sometimes we get students with the same name, or a lot of them have the same last name. So we need to identify each student. They need their final letter grade and final score in points or percentage, depending on how you calculate your grades, listed and are clearly identified, as John went over in the highlighting of your file. Grading detail. So what that includes is like scores for your assignments and final exam that supports your final letter grade. A lot of the time, if you're using Canvas, you know, there's a lot of scores, but there is a minimum requirement of at least 4 items to show how you got your grade, depending on how many units. So if your class is, say, a 3-unit, you would need at least 4 or 5 items. If it's a 2-unit, it's like 3 to 4 items, things like that. Grading scale, that's basically to show us how you got your grade. Most common is the 90 to 100, 80 to 89. But if you do points, anything different from the standard scale, we do need the standard scale as well, but we do need to have that listed there. So if you've gotten that on there, you're good. When you're done and you save your stuff, we do to make sure it's in the Excel format, because we have learned going through accepting just the CSV file that formatting and information gets lost. So we tried to accommodate and say, okay, well, they look like an Excel, but information has gotten lost when we've been reviewing the files and stuff. So that's why a lot of things have gone back, and some frustrations and whatnot, because you sent it correctly, but something got deleted in the transfer. And please make sure your file name is in the correct way, because sometimes if it's not, a lot of times your file either gets missed or we think it's something else and it's actually a different section. So if it's clearly labeled in the format with your section name dash the section ID schedule number, your last name dash the term, and if it's 2 files, grade or attendance, that way we can make sure we have it. So we're not sending you multiple messages saying, hey, we haven't gotten this file. Go ahead and go to the next one, John, please. Let's see, for your attendance, similar to your grades, it just needs to make sure you have their ID numbers, their first name and last name, dates. Dates are required for all attendance. Attendance is required for all classes. There's some misconception that some of the 100%, some of the classes like the online classes do not require attendance, but per state mandate, all classes, including the asynchronous classes, require attendance. So we have to have dates listed in there. You can use assignments for your attendance for asynchronous classes. Attendance key is needed only if you don't use the attendance tool, or if you do something a little different on how you take your attendance. We need to know how that goes. We do need to see their dates on there. Like I do know from what was discussed about attendance in Canvas, if there's a week 1 or week 2, week 3 used, a key can be used with the dates of what those weeks are. So like if week 1 was August 9th through August 12th, you do that type of thing. But dates are required. Go ahead and the next one, please. So for submission, so all sections require rosters for grades and attendance. Cross-listed courses, I know in Canvas, when you do your classes for lecture and whatnot, they're all mixed together. But when it comes to submission of your files, you need to separate your files out. It's a big confusion, and sometimes there's classes that have a lot of students. So we do have to have each individual section. In the menu bar, you would click on the daily work tab, the briefcase, faculty link, and this is where you're going to go and actually fill in the submission form and upload your files like you did in WebAdvisor for anyone that's done it before. So you'll select electronic submission of rosters. Please go to the next one, John. And then at this point you have the form. So for those that have done it, it's the same form. You're going to fill in your location, enter in your name and your faculty ID number. Has to be your ID number for State Center, because I know some teach elsewhere as well. The section name, please enter your section name as your actual section, your class. So a lot of times they don't get filled in correctly, and then we can't really identify what section you're talking about, because sometimes what we've gotten in the past is when we got your Excel file, your class is not labeled within that Excel file. So we don't know what it is, but we do need to make sure that you put in your class section name and number, and then your email from your State Center email. I do know that some faculty don't use it, but that is how we communicate with you, through your email at work here. So let's see section. Okay, so now uploading your actual files, you're going to click on choose file to select. So there's 2 sections. The first one is for a combined grade file. So if you combine both your grades and attendance into one Excel spreadsheet, you'll click choose file, and then that's when you browse to find your file in whatever folder you saved it as, and then you'll click that and it'll attach it. Now, if you're doing 2 files, you're going to do both. So you're going to pick the first one for your grades and the second one's for just the attendance file. There has been a misconception that you didn't need to upload it, but attendance wise, but you do need to upload your attendance if you do have 2 files. So make sure your files are labeled correctly and select your file when you click choose file and browse and find your files. And then once you're done finding your files, you'll click on submit form, and then it'll be sent to our online forms to where we do our part. Go ahead and go to the next one, please. If everything is filled out correctly, it should be okay. You'll get the message that says file uploaded successfully. If you don't have the file format correctly, the error that you see there that says server response error, unknown server error, do you want to see the response page? Don't ignore the message. You'll have to refresh the page or re-enter and select the file again in the correct format if you don't use the right format. So we have to make sure we're using Excel in Microsoft Office as your format. When you have successfully submitted your roster, the following pop-up, the successfully uploaded box will pop up. It'll list your file name, section, and whatnot. An email will be sent to you guys to the email address that's provided on the submission form. It'll let you know that we've received it and that we're going to contact you after we review it. It basically says allow up to 10 business days from the due date before inquiring about the status. A second email will then be sent after the review process is complete, notifying you of acceptance or if any revisions that need to be made on the rosters. Go ahead, John. So here's some little resources for you guys. Self-service tutorials. Self-service tutorials are there on our website, but we've also listed the link here for quick access. Report of incomplete form, there's the link there for it. To assign an incomplete grade, you would give them an I. The report of incomplete form must be submitted to our office by email, which is records@fresnocitycollege.edu. Just about any request in reference to grades will be going to records at fresnocitycollege.edu. It must include the work agreed upon by you and the student, the expiration date that you're giving the student to complete their work, and the grade to be assigned if the student does not complete their work. It's called the in lieu of grade. Now, assigning on your grade book, one thing I forgot to mention, if you're giving an incomplete, their final grade should be an I on your grade book, the initial time that you're giving it to the student. But once it's done, assigning the final grade after incomplete work is submitted. So on the original form, you're going to fill in the new grade and sign it if it's not been signed, and then update your grade book with new scores and grades, and then email them to records. If we have the late instructor request, you would request that at records also. If you have any questions or need assistance, I know this is pretty short and sometimes it can get kind of complicated. We're trying to avoid that, so you can just give me a call. I have my number there. Go ahead, John. And then so some reasons for documents to be returned. Sometimes there's no attendance or it's unclear for every student. Handwritten documents, they're not legible. Incorrect file format, we're only accepting Excel. PDFs and images are not accepted. Grading scale or attendance legend might be missing. Sometimes there's discrepancies on the grades and we need to make sure that everything matches. Also, final letter grades missing or are not identified. Cross-listed sections that aren't separated, we do get those quite a bit. Final scores / grades do not align with the grade scale. What that means is they don't match. Like, say they're 800 is a B, but the student has an A, or they have 400 points and they have an A, but it says in the grade scale that it's a D. So we need to just make sure that everything is matching. Also missing or incorrect student ID numbers. That's where I was talking about Canvas's ID number. So just make sure you use the SIS ID number column. And then before you submit everything, just verify that you kind of looked over everything and check your checklist here. And like I said, if you have any questions, just you can reach out to me by email or giving me a call at 443-8636. And
Thank you, everyone. We have some really great questions in the chat that I'd like to field to the group, and whichever one is in your area of expertise, if you could help to answer that question. The questions are really great for the entire group. So one of them is, how do we put the grading scale in Excel? And actually, John, can you field that one? Because I know you've helped a lot of folks with that.
Trying to find my mute button. Yeah, basically you just go down to the bottom past the last bit of student information and just type it. You can type it horizontally, you can type it vertically, you just add it yourself. So it's just, again, scroll down to the bottom past the last student, type the words grade scale, and then start typing the scale below that.
And also for Excel sheets, is it for attendance and grades? Can you do 2 tabs or does it need to be 2 files in Excel?
Oh,
Take that, Bobby.
yeah, sorry, I thought I was muted. For those, I mean, ultimately, we would like one workbook, so you could have 2 tabs. But if you're not savvy with Excel and we will take two files. So you can do your gradebook and then your attendance file once you've uploaded it and everything like that. Please do not send the attendance link that you get from Canvas, because like John said, you know, it's only good for 24 hours and we can't open it. And even if we tried to open it, it doesn't work for us. So once you do get that, you just go through and make your Excel with your report and upload it like you would your gradebook. 2 files is fine. If you
And
can't do one.
how do we combine both credit and non-credit on the same file?
I'm not completely sure what you
That's,
mean, but
Linda, do you want to elaborate on that question with an example?
I just wanted to know, when we download like the list, is it automatically going to combine credit and non-credit students in the same document, or do we have to manually combine them?
okay, so if your class is credit, no credit, or pass, no pass, you're just going to treat it like a normal class and you're going to enter their grades like ABC and put that in your gradebook.
Oh.
And then when you enter those in self-service, you're going to enter the ABC, whatever they got. And then the system itself will convert those grades to pass, no pass, but your file should represent the actual letter grade. Now, if your class is a non-credit class,
Now, my class actually combines both students' credits and non-credits, are both in the same.
so is it a cross-listed course then?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
yes.
so then you're gonna separate those out. So the ones that is not non-credit, you're gonna separate the section out.
Okay.
Myrna,
Thank
can
you.
you, I have a question about that. If the class is credit, no credit, and they're cross-listed, are both classes credit, no credit?
No, there will be cross-listed classes
Okay.
that one is credit, no credit, the other would be for credit. But yeah, I saw that question a couple of times. When there's a cross-listed class, how do you split that? And I think that's what your question is, Linda? Is that what your question is? How do you?
Do we need to split them or combine them, or
They need-
each one is going to be separate on a separate file?
Each section will be on its own file. So if you have your cross-listed classes, you're gonna separate them out. When you, so you're gonna download your files, and then in your spreadsheet, that's where you're gonna, if there's a way to do it in Canvas, you can try to do it that way, or you can just download it and then separate them in Excel.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that was a question that several people asked because of this merging of courses that some folks do in Canvas. So we may need to explore that a little further with clear instructions, because I think that can be confusing for some folks. It's more manipulation of the file. Susan has a fantastic question, and we get questions like this all of the time about how do we enter asynchronous attendance for a fully online class.
Well, an online class, well, there's a couple different ways. If you're not using the Canvas tool, you can use participation or assignments. Dates have to be listed. So you could either on your spreadsheet after you've done your download, you could put dates depending on when you've required students to turn in their assignments. And then you could label it as, you know, Susie turned in her assignment on August 9th and she was here. So it's just based on how you take your assignments or how you want to take attendance, but we do need to have some sort of attendance, whether it's based on their participation or tests or however, and it labeled as such.
Susan, we used to advise that, you know, if your syllabus had the schedule of assignments and then the student did that assignment, then it could be assumed that they were attending that week. We have actually conferred with the other colleges in our district too, because there was a rumor that all of the colleges were different as far as what was being submitted. We did confirm with the other colleges that this process is the same. And as far as the attendance for these asynchronous classes, you can either use that roll call, or in the grade, the assignment columns, you can put the date in the actual assignment title in the grade book. I know that's extra work, and we're trying to do our best to guide faculty. Here we are at the end of the semester, so that might be a little more challenging, but we're open to helping to make that an easier process.
There was one other thing.
Susan, did that answer your question?
Yes, that answers it. Thank you very much.
I know David had a question about last date of attendance on the roster. So when you're entering letter grades and a student fails, you put a last date of attendance in self-service. But on your grade rosters, when you're submitting them, we do also have to have those dates listed next to those students to match what you've entered into self-service. That's always been a requirement. I'm not sure where that had kind of fell through the cracks somewhere, but in our grade files, they have to match and should be listed there so we can make sure that everything's good.
That also is a way to indicate interaction with the student, right? That it's not a correspondence course, that there has been interaction and the submission of assignments throughout the semester on those dates. So that is to assist with compliance for students to get the units and for us to get paid for those classes. So I know I usually answer the question of why, because I commonly ask that. I need to know why something is required. So I hope it's okay that I shared that with you. I think I answered Travis's question effectively about teachers using sign-in sheets, like to pass them around in an in-person class. That information is my understanding that some people turn those in as PDFs or JPEGs or something. And so would somebody like to officially answer that question?
Yeah, I can do that. So I've had other faculty come in and ask me the same question. You know, based on how you want to do it, we still need that in an Excel format. So unfortunately, if you don't use Canvas, you'll have to enter that into an Excel spreadsheet. So that's really all I can say. Now, based on how maybe going further in the future, you can either do that weekly or just so you're not bombarded at the end, because I know it's very busy and we are crunch time and it's a lot of grades to enter and a lot of dates and things to make sure you have on there. So you do need to enter those into an Excel spreadsheet. You can either do that weekly, whatever works for your schedule and your timing, but it does need to be put in there as an Excel.
Okay, can I follow up
we
with that
have
question?
a couple of.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Can I just follow up real quick on that?
Sure.
I actually did use the Canvas tool this semester and it worked fine. So am I to understand, watching this whole thing, the Canvas export for attendance is just a list of all of the attendance records. We can submit that and that's okay. I don't need to like convert it to a grid.
No, yeah, we could take that. It's fine.
Okay.
Because when it comes into as a CSV file and then you make it the Excel, we can see it that way. It's fine. It'll list everybody's dates, names, times, and whatnot. So.
Thank you, David. And a great question about incompletes. Patricia asked, does the student have to sign the incomplete form? And if so, how is that done? And do you forward the incomplete form to the student or does the instructor?
This is an instructor form. So the instructor is basically going to get it off of our website and then forward it to the student. And then the student will need to forward it back. So the instructor has it on record and then the instructor will email us the form.
Can they use Adobe Sign for that?
If they have access and are able to, yes, they can do that. Now, in certain circumstances where students did not have access to any of that, we do accept an email that the student acknowledges the fact that they are in agreement with the incomplete. And then we could, here in our office, we'll just kind of match up the email on the form and save it off. But it isn't important that the student either signs it or sends that email acknowledgement, because in the past there have been instances where new faculty didn't know necessarily the rules of what giving an incomplete is, and maybe that student stopped attending and they thought something happened to the student because it was just they were sick at some point in the semester and they've issued them an incomplete. So then when the student comes in the next semester wanting to re-register for the class, they're like, well, I didn't request this. And then it blocks them from registering going forward, being that if they didn't pass the class the semester before. So when I see Patricia's question, if they do not return it. I know we've had that. Myrna, can you chime in on that one? I mean, usually it's just, we would ask for the student to email it. And then Patricia, you could submit the form, or you could choose to, tell the student that, it's important that you sign it and submit it somehow back to you.
The student needs to acknowledge that they agree to the terms. And so if they do not return the form to you, they're basically not agreeing to the terms. And so then they get the grade rather than the incomplete. But if they email you because they're, maybe they're having trouble to sign the form, like Bobby said, if they email you saying, yes, I agree to these terms, and you forward that to records with the form, we would accept that. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, did we miss any other questions?
Yes, Bobby, Carlos had a question. Is the grade and attendance extraction process on Canvas different if you combine two classes together? They're the same course with different times. It just made it easier for him to post announcements and assignments.
You would have to separate them, and just like a cross-listed course. Each section has to have its own individual roster. So if he downloads them and they're mixed together, he'll have to go in as if it were like a cross-listed class and filter them out and separate them into two different files.
And can I just add for clarification, inside of the grade file of a cross-listed course, there is a column for section ID. So you will see the sections will be different for the separate sections that you've cross-listed into one course. So using that column, I think it's column F, you can identify which students are in which section.
Thank you, John, I forgot about that.
We also had a question answered by Rosemary, and I want to do a shout out to Rosemary. Thank you so much for helping us out, answering questions in the chat. It's greatly appreciated. Do we need to highlight anything in the attendance spreadsheet?
No.
Okay.
No, because it's pretty straightforward. I mean, because if they're not using the attendance function report, as long as it's labeled as to how it was, like, because sometimes we get some really interesting marks on attendance and it doesn't explain, well, what's absent, what's present, tardy or accepted or excused or whatever. As long as it's labeled on how you took it, if it, and as long as it's not clearly for us to see, okay, P, they're, they're present, absent, they're, what I mean? They don't need to highlight anything. I mean, unless they want to, they want to make it pretty, go ahead. Doesn't matter.
And someone had a formatting question on the file names. They're using underscores and not dashes. Is that okay? Or
so we did use the underscores before. That was a previous practice, but we're finding that going through and with what issues we've had with the naming conventions, that the dash is a little easier. With the underscore, you have to hold down an extra key. It's just faster to go along if you use the dash. It's fine. I mean, but we're not going to reject it if it's an underscore, but it's fine.
And I'm not sure if I'm sorry, my internet in my office just totally decided it was not going to play anymore today. But we're back. So I'm sorry. It happens to the best of us too. But I just wanted to put in a plug about the incompletes. We your class does close at the end of the semester, but we're able to reopen with just that student for you to finish that incomplete with them. So just contact our office and we can assist with that. And we're almost out of time here. If it's okay, I'm gonna close it up here. We do have open hours and also appointment times if you have individual questions about how to tune up your grade book by getting rid of those superfluous columns and even cleaning up the files in your Canvas course. We're more than happy to help you with that to help streamline the grade submission process. I hope this information was helpful for you, and please know that we are all here to support an easy grade submission process so we can all go forward to the holiday break.
Oh, Jody, can I say one more thing about the incompletes? Some instructors think, and I know some students that I've had some experience with come in, and I think they expect it, like if something's going on, they expect you to give them an incomplete to extend it. The incomplete is for those who have had extenuating circumstances, and if you're willing to work with the student, and it's only been like a couple assignments or maybe a final exam type of thing, and that, say they were pregnant, they were going to go, and then they had their baby, or they had to go to hospital, or whatever reason being. But if you choose to work with the student, you can. It's not mandatory. And then also the deadline dates is also up to you. I've had some faculty ask, and some faculty gave a date, and then the student found out, oh, it's the end of the term. Well, I want it now, the end of the term, but originally, because it's a contract between you and the student as to when they're going to make up that work. So it's totally up to you. It's not mandatory for the student. So whatever guidelines you give the student is what you could give the student unless they have extenuating circumstances. So if you have any questions, just go ahead and you can reach out to me.
And a final thank you to Susie Nitzel for organizing us all together and helping us to present our collaboration. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and thank you for joining us.